Today is day 3 of Hunter Biden's federal gun trial. If convicted, the first son could face 25 years in prison. Fox News' Rich Edson is live outside the courthouse in Wilmington, Delaware this morning with more. Rich, good morning to you.
Good morning, Maria. Well, if you've ever heard Hunter Biden's audiobook, you're caught up on about the first day of questioning that we had here in the courthouse. The prosecution played lengthy excerpts from that audiobook during the first questioning that they brought up to FBI Special Agent Erica Jensen to use Hunter's own words to establish that he was a crack user and an addict when he bought a gun back in 2018. When this trial resumes at 9 a.m., defense attorney Abby Lowell picks up the cross-examination of Jensen. Prosecutors also showed the page of that gun form asking if the gun buyer, Hunter in this case, was in use of illegal drugs. It's marked no. They showed text from Hunter the day after he bought the gun saying he was waiting for a dealer named Mookie. The defense says the gun form essentially asks whether Hunter is currently a drug user. It doesn't ask whether he's ever done drugs. The defense maintained Hunter wasn't on drugs at the time he bought the gun. Then he never used it, had it for only 11 days, and then his sister-in-law, Hallie, threw it out. Prosecutors also brought Hunter's notorious laptop into the courtroom. Investigators have a summary chart of its contents of about 18,000 pages. While President Biden was at the White House, First Lady Jill Biden made another appearance at the courthouse yesterday. So did Hunter's sister, Ashley. As prosecutors played excerpts of Hunter's audiobook, Ashley was crying intermittently, and at one point, Jill comforted her. Eventually, Ashley walked out of the courtroom. We expect the prosecution's next witnesses could be Kathleen Buell, that's Hunter's ex-wife, who he's also in another legal fight with over allegations of unpaid alimony. Prosecutors have also indicated they'll call Zoe Kessin, that's an ex-girlfriend of Hunter, and of course Hallie Biden, that's Hunter Biden's sister-in-law and Beau Biden's former wife after he died. Back to you.
All right, Rich, thanks very much. Rich Edson in Wilmington. Lee Carter, your reaction.
Look, I think when you look at this, there's so many people who are saying these trials are apples and oranges when you compare Donald Trump to what's happening here. Except at the same time, I think the treatment of all of this and the way that people are looking at this, it is important to look at the comparison, to see how things are being covered, to see how people are addressing these issues. And I think you will see that there's a very, very different standard that's being applied by the media to this case than they did to Donald Trump, understanding that there are some key differences here. But when you look at all of this, you do see a very, very troubled family and a very, very troubled background. A lot of things that you need to have questions about that are very, very important for the American people to think about more broadly than just what the gun represents, but much more bigger about what this means that the Biden family was responsible for.
And the media is very sentimental to that and very sensitive to what you're saying. I believe it was Andrea Mitchell yesterday who said, oh, you know, this trial is going to be unearthing private things about the Biden family. I mean, like, you know, give me a break. 2 weeks ago, we're hearing Stormy Daniels and all these private things that she says happened with Trump, and it was fine. And now it's like, oh, you know, private information is going to be released, Mike.
Yeah, the problem here is that this feeds into people's belief that there is this two-tier justice system, right? And they look at this, the Trump situation, they had an individual Trump they couldn't stand, so they went looking for some crime. Right. And they had to piece it together, and eventually they come up with something that they consider a crime.
They didn't piece it together, they fabricated it together.
But
there was nothing to
all
piece.
together out of whole
And everybody
cloth.
knows that. That's why it's hard to say it's not weaponized. It has been weaponized.
Right, but with Hunter, if his name was anything other than Biden, he would have been banged up a long time ago on these charges, right? It's obvious to people who watch it. It's disappointing, I think, to those of us, and I think we're all in that category, who believe it's important to have faith in the justice system and to understand that it is fair, as they say, and without favor. But this, over the past couple of years, I think, has kind of destroyed that for a lot of people.
And Hunter Biden's wife, Melissa, had it out yesterday. She cursed and called one-time Trump advisor Garrett Ziegler a Nazi piece of SH. Yeah. Ziegler was sued by Hunter last year for publishing the contents of the infamous laptop. So that's why she got on him, because
It's all so dirty.
I mean, the research group Marco Polo was the first to publish Hunter's laptop photos. They called this out on X, saying, quote, the wife has the same level of impulse control as Hunter. To the family bringing decency back, anyone who is perceived as opposition is a Nazi. Truly contemptible liars and scoundrels. The firm was first to publish Hunter's laptop photos, and those photos were seen. I mean, you know, look, they tried to say that the laptop was disinformation, Russian misinformation. It wasn't at all.
No, it was
we all
actually
knew
his
that.
laptop.
But it was right before the election, and they fooled a lot of people with those 51 intelligence signatures.
Yeah, of course they did. Imagine if that laptop had never actually, been discovered, and none of this would have come to light. But I think, Lee, you made a very thoughtful point, and that is what this whole mess, what it really gets to is the lack of fiber and fabric within the Biden family. This is not a group of noble people who are trying to make the world a better place. These are people who want to get ahead, and they'll do anything they can to get there.
And I think if the argument really can be seen is how do you treat the Biden's family versus how do you treat Trump's family? And it is a very, very different, it's a very, very different standard, and the American people, I do believe, see that.
And look at the two families. I mean, isn't that a reflection on the father as well?
Right.
Right? One guy's sleeping with the widow of his brother.
Right.
The other family, I'm sorry,
The
but
Trump
this
children,
is like, look at the Trump children. They're good kids.
And their spouses are, they're very solid people.
They are, and they're a loving family.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know the Bidens, but I mean, there's a real. I mean, look at the families.
Well, in the media, I think
Look at the
also
kids.
they did a very successful job of shifting the narrative off of what I thought was always the most important part of this was the pay for play, right, and the influence peddling that was going on. And it's clear that that's what they were selling was the Biden name and access to the former vice president at the time and his position and power. But they managed to obfuscate that in a way that people never really focused on it, and they didn't understand why that's important and why that it shouldn't be allowed, but it was, and it was in plain sight.
And it feels like it's still in plain sight. And we should point out that the White House says it's not true. Right? The White House says that Joe Biden had nothing to do with Hunter Biden's business and didn't accept money. But the House Oversight Committee is saying something completely different. And they have a letter to Joe Biden with tens of millions of dollars that they say that they have identified of money that the family has taken in, and 2 checks at least that they say has gone directly to Joe Biden. And they're using serious terms: money laundering, bribery, influence peddling.
Yeah. Anybody who spent time in Washington, D.C. looks at that case and with the asset tracing that went on in terms of following the money and understood it's clear. That's the part that's so frustrating about this. You talk about this, and then the other side, though, they hold the line and they just roll their eyes and go, that's not important. And the media, follows suit.
Well, we should point out that the White House and Joe Biden did not get back to the Oversight Committee. So we don't really know. They're not answering these very serious charges. They're not answering.